What's up, everybody? And welcome to another wonderful Wednesday where we put in the unseen work. Like the ticker says down below, if you happen to be stumbling upon unseen work for the first time, be sure to get brought up to speed by checking out the book and the TEDx talk, which came before the show you are watching or listening to now. You can do all of that by heading to my website. It's milesbiggs.com, miles with a Y, and you can find all the stuff there. So while we're doing this live stream, I want to remind everybody that you can bring comments to the show. Like this guy looks familiar, right? Bring your questions for Scott, who is our guest tonight. Bring your comments. Get involved in the interview. We can co-create this interview together, and that's part of the fun of live streaming. So if you have an idea, you have a thought, you want to jump in, do that. And instead of my double ugly mug there, we could pull you into the stream as well. So who are we talking to tonight, right? We are talking to Mr. Scott Carson. He is the president of We Close Notes and also a nationally syndicated podcast and radio host known as the Note Guy, which I love that. I love the people who are the guys of stuff. I talked to a bucket list guy before. Scott will talk about that. And now we got the Note Guy. So ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause for Scott Carson.
Oh, what is going on? Happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're all having margaritas and fajitas tonight. But hey, glad to be here. Unseen work was the margarita that I shook about 10 minutes before we got rock and rolling here today.
Hey, there you go. Or if you hadn't shown us the margarita and we just felt your bubbly personality and energy, the margarita itself would have been the unseen work.
No alcohol or alternative things to get my bubbly personality rock and rolling, brother. But that's funny. Yeah, exactly.
So let's kick it off with this, right? When we say the Note Guy, I think it's a perfect place to start for a little bit of what you're seen for, what you do in the day-to-day. You are the Note Guy. Your show is the Note Closers podcast. You've got We Close Notes. So bring us up to speed on what this means and what you do.
Yeah, that's a good question. No, I'm not making musical notes. No, I'm not typing notes or sending notes. What I'm in the business of doing is buying distressed debt, mortgages or IOUs or notes. And so I've been doing that for 13 plus years, buying distressed mortgages direct from banks and hedge funds, buying it at big discounts, and then becoming the bank and working with the borrowers that are in distress. God knows we have enough of them right now, and working to actually keep people in their houses. And how I got the name The Note Guy was kind of funny. You'll love the story because it kind of came from a lot of unseen work. As I was cranking out initially, over 10 years ago, I was cranking out a lot of content, videos, short Facebook Lives, using the old Dell flip cameras that used to do that, and just sharing content with people. And as I would travel across the country, I was asked to speak at different networking events or meetup groups. People are like, "Hey, you're that Note Guy I see on YouTube." I'm like, "Yes." And so it was funny. 4 nights in a row, 4 different investment clubs, one in San Antonio, one in Austin, one in San Diego, one in LA. 4 nights back to back. Somebody came up to me as I walked in the room. "Hey, you're that Note Guy," and I just kind of stuck. So that's what the Note Guy means. I'm buying a lot of debt, working with banks, and trying to keep people in their houses if I can.
That's awesome. Those are the best nicknames. When they're bestowed upon you by somebody else, that's when you know you're on something. Most
of the time, all right. I think we've all been given nicknames we don't like in some cases, and that's quite all right too. But that's that's usually a college thing for the most part. But anyway,
yeah. I say you got some love for your drink here.
Hey, Marcello, same thing, buddy. It is good. It's Cabo Wabo tequila, Le Grand Marnier, shaking up in my house. So yeah, good stuff.
There you go. And he's coming from Atlanta, so a fellow Southerner there for you.
There you go, hot Atlanta, baby. Yeah.
Cool. So you are the Note Guy. That's an awesome story. And so you buy debt, you buy distressed debt. And the way you said, you help people keep people in their home. So basically, instead of them going into foreclosure, you step in and say, "Hey, I'm the new bank, and I'll work with you." Is that how it works?
That's the first conversation. We buy their debt at a discount because they haven't paid usually in 6 months to 6 years in some cases.
Wow.
And so it's literally just getting them on the phone, say, "Listen, what's going on? What kind of problem have you been through? What type of financial hiccup? Did you lose your job? Did you get sick? Did you get divorced? Somebody die? What happened? And well, can you start making your payments? Can we work out a true win-win solution for them to stay in the house if we can, get them back on track? If they can't pay, do they have somebody who can take over the payments? If they can't do that, can we sell the property? or do we just need to give them like cash for keys, just kind of walk away before we foreclose? And about 40% of the time, we do have to take the legal route and foreclose because they won't work with us. But most of the time, we do a lot of good in helping people stay in their houses if we can, help them keep that dream of home ownership that Americans have versus it turning into a nightmare like for a lot of people out there right now.
Yeah. So how do you get started in that? How do you, before you were the note guy, what guy were you, right? How'd you do this?
So that's a really good question. So before this, I was a banker at JP Morgan Chase. I was the banker. I was the gringo is what they would call me because I was a banker for JP Morgan Chase in South Austin. 79% of our clientele was Spanish speaking. I habla un poquito, margarita and taco, about all the words I could say there. But I was the banker, and I had a buddy of mine that was a financial advisor beforehand, and he started a mortgage company that was traveling the country, working with investors of all sites. And he partnered up with a couple other investors, and I went to lunch with him and said, "Hey, this is really what I want to do." I mean, I'd tried to be an investor beforehand. I'd flop beforehand, but had licked my wounds for a little bit. I think we'll share that for a story for later on. But
yeah,
I said, okay, that's what I want to do. So we started traveling the country in 2004, working with investors, doing mortgages, doing cash out refinances for people because it was just a crazy mortgage market. And then when the music changed in 2008, when all the music stopped and that merry-go-round stopped on a dime, I just stopped originating and started jumping on the same side, a different side, and started calling banks. Hey, what do you have? What kind of naughty borrowers do you have? People that aren't paying or in trouble that you want to get off your books, and we can buy it from you. So that's how I got started. Was just literally dialing, making 50 to 100 phone calls a day, kind of the whole Will Smith and Pursuit of Happiness kind of thing.
Sure. So that makes sense. So the unseen work for you of buying debt was working in the banking industry to understand how all that works, right? So we'll keep following this rabbit hole back. How'd you get into banking? Is that something you always wanted to do, or was like a second career there?
Yeah, I've always loved finances, numbers. I got my securities license and trading licenses when I was younger on my own, and got into banking after I actually worked for Smith Barney, which is a financial investment firm, Citibank, and they actually closed their branch location here in Austin. So for a couple of years, I wasn't in finance. I was doing odd jobs that I could, but I always loved numbers. I always loved finance. I'm just quick on my feet that way. And that's what really drove me to banking. Banking is a great industry to be in. And I wanted to do something more. And I hit that glass ceiling for Chase here in Texas, and an opportunity to kind of get my feet wet and advance in a different way, something I was interested in doing in real estate and learning the right way to invest versus the wrong way. And it just skyrocketed from there. I mean, I've had peaks and valleys along the way, but it's been just an amazing ride over the last, I want to say almost 20 years now as an investor, and 13 years of just buying debt, where that's really all that I do. I'm not buying rentals. I'm not doing fix and flips anymore. It's just really becoming the bank and trying to not only to help banks get the stuff off their books, but also to help keep people in their houses. But that's the thing. I mean, it's an interesting ride. It's not the most known niche in real estate investing out there. Everybody gets excited about HGTV and Flip This House, or
Sure.
Flip or Flop, whatever those shows are out there, Flippity Floppity Flu, whatever. And those are great, but they're fiction for the most part. It's not really how investing works. And so I was fortunate enough, for about 4 years, from 2004 to 2008, to really have an apprenticeship before the market changed from these investors that we partnered with, who taught me all sorts of creative financing and creative investing, and really had had somebody to hold my hand for 4 years until I made the jump out on my own in 2008.
That's awesome. And what strikes me about you is you don't think of a numbers guy being an outgoing guy all the time, right? So me, right? I literally picked corporate communications for my major in college, not business administration. Because when I looked at the curriculum, they're about the same. What's the difference here? Oh, corporate communication, I only had to take one accounting class. Business, I had to take two. I was like,
yep.
Looks like I'm going to be a comm major, right? Because I can do numbers, and it's funny. I had to go back. I've taken certificate programs in accounting and finance since, because it's funny, Anyway, I'm rambling, but I had to, when I was a GM of a company, it's like, okay, great. Here's the P&L. You're responsible for it. I was like, well, should have taken that accounting class in college. So then I took it later.
Exactly.
So I'm a talker. I'm a people person. I love to do this, not necessarily have my head in spreadsheets and do numbers. So you're unique to me in the fact that you're very outgoing, you're very personable, and you love numbers and the numbers guy. So Do you find that you're unique in your industry and your niche, or the more are you out there than I know about?
So you and I have that in common a little bit, because I wanted to actually go into college. I wanted to be the next ESPN broadcaster, the next Dan Patrick. That's what I wanted to do, to be the next sportscaster. And I kind of went that route, journalism and then mass comm. And I've always had the entrepreneur bug from an early age. My parents were entrepreneurs, and in between my sophomore and junior year of college, I took a year off to figure out what I wanted to do. I played college football. I was lucky enough to have an academic and athletic scholarship, but just stopped playing for a little while and tried to figure out what I want to do. I went back into college. It's like, okay, I need to go the business route. That's if I want to make money. Yes, you can make some money being a sportscaster, but you're traveling all over the place. You're not really in the same space. I was like, okay, that's not really what I want to make money. That's what it comes down to, especially when you start paying for college for your own self. You want to make money to make it.
Absolutely.
And so I settled on business. I looked at the curriculum like you do. I said, oh, okay. I was able to PL/P out of the 2 years of Spanish that I was required there. Otherwise, I would have had to take a third year and another couple classes to be a mass journalism major. But just ended up, going that route and graduating with a dean's list at Texas State University, or was Southwest Texas State back in the day. But I love it. I've always enjoyed. There's always a story behind the numbers. Most people get so bogged in the numbers, but numbers will tell you a story if you know how to read them and evaluate them long enough. And so I love the story. And that's one of the things I think that makes me unique is I can look at a deal, I can tell what's going on, especially with all the numbers that I'm at, and I like telling stories. That's what people remember is stories. They don't remember the numbers on a spreadsheet. They remember the fact that somebody had lived in a house for 4 years not making a mortgage payment, or somebody had raised their daughter for 18 years in that house that they're upside down by 100%. So I just like having fun. I mean, I've been in jobs that I hated going to work every day, and there's nothing more closer to indentured servitude than having to do that, to show up. Getting up at 8 o'clock. Me, you and I were joking about, I don't mind springing out of bed in the morning after the cat pounces on me to feed him.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. You got to enjoy what you're doing. And I really do enjoy what I do every day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Maybe another comment here I'm going to acknowledge from Hema. Thank you. She's got a really cool podcast catering toward mompreneurs. So working moms that, I don't know if you know this, Scott, but I'm not a mom, but I was on her podcast. You know what?
Hema does a great job. Moms. Yeah, I think she commented. I was liking one of the posts. I think we just connected on LinkedIn too recently. So hey, Hema, great to connect.
She's sharp. You'll enjoy a conversation with her. Thanks for watching, Hema. So I want to get back to a story you talked about briefly. I felt like there was more there when we talked about it last time when you were on the show with Dave Cooper and I on Increasing Influence. You were referencing a road trip and how the road trip helped spring you forward. So let's talk about that. What is this road trip? How does it factor into what you're doing today?
So 2010, I'm sitting here in Austin, Texas. And if you think about what the market was like back then, a lot of defaults, people were losing their houses upside down. I'd gone through a divorce a year before that, a business partnership that went separate. And I was like, I got to do something. And I'm a big baseball fan. And I've always been an advocate of writing down your goals or coming up with, goals that you want to accomplish. And one of my biggest things is I wanted to always go around and see all the Major League Baseball parks. Never thought it would be possible to do. So I said, well, let's put it down. So I'm sitting there, March 2010, figuring out the baseball schedule. And said, what if I left Austin, could I hit all 30 Major League Baseball parks in like 30 weeks? And so I planned out this, not really mythical, because I actually had the dates. I put it in my calendar, who's playing what, who the Rangers are playing, who the Astros are playing. Just kind of went around for that. In the matter of 3 weeks, I had, it's weird, total divine intervention. And in the next 3 weeks, I had 4 different investment clubs reach out to me, different parts of the country, and ask me if they could use like my videos as producing my content, that I could come out and speak at their investment club, or they could use it in their newsletters. I was like, yeah, you can use it. I would love to speak. When would you like me to come speak? And the dates they wanted me to come speak lined up perfectly with the dates of this trip. Houston being one of them, Tampa being another one, Philadelphia being another club, and then New York being another club at all. So it was all weird. It wasn't like all in my home, in Austin or Texas here. And I was like, okay, God, you're telling me something here. So in a matter of 2 weeks, I held garage sales. I sold everything in my house, got rid of everything except my dog at the time and my truck and some clothes, basically. I had some clothes, obviously. And I set out in this 30-week journey I planned to travel across the country. And I would speak at an investment club one night. I would go to a ball game when I was in town. And it just really led to that kind of this grassroots effort. I didn't have quite the Madden mobile. It was my white Ford F-150, four-door pickup truck driving around. I didn't know where I'd be staying one night. One night I'd be in a hotel room. One night friend would reach out to me, hey, come crash. And that 30-week trip turned into over 3.5 years of nonstop travel. And it was just an amazing thing that really, if I wasn't the note guy before, I was definitely the note guy after that. And it was just an amazing time. I met people all across the country that have had a big impact on my business, because now instead of me just having a network in Austin, now I have this nationwide network. And it really helped me blossom my business because I was getting in these lists of mortgages and notes from banks all across the country. Now I had eyes and ears in just about every market across the country. And so that was an amazing thing. I literally put myself on the line. I didn't leave Austin with a ton of money. I think I had like $2,000 in my bank account. I was like, you know what? If I fail, I know I can call my mom or some of my friends and I'll get enough gas money to get back home. And I can crash on a couch or two. So I really believed in it. And I've always had strong faith. It comes from my dad, my mom, but it just was an amazing thing when you put yourself out on the line there and, technically burn the bridge, burn the ships to go out there and do it. And it just crazy. It was a crazy journey. And I enjoyed a lot of hot dogs. I found a lot of great cheeseburgers across the country and some hole-in-the-wall restaurants.
That's wild. Like, I'm processing 3.5 years. Like, in a way, you were homeless for 3.5 years. Like, you chose to be. You sold all your stuff. And you spoke about finance and being the note guy, and then watch baseball.
Yeah, I would meet with bankers. It was funny, because I'm about to turn 44 here, but I was, barely 30 at the time. And I'd walk in a bank in a suit with a student of mine. My student would always be like, 40, 50s, even 60s. And the banker would go talk to him like he was Mr. Carson. I'm like, oh, no, this is the guy you need to talk to. And they would look down at me. What do you know, you young whippersnapper? And I'm like, well, I know you got $75 million in bad debt in your books, and half of that's commercial debt, and you need to move this off your books in the next 90 days, not the next 9 months. And they would be like, okay, come and sit down. It was just an interesting thing. I mean,
yeah,
I had people that, I lived in Florida. What I thought would be a week turned into 3 months because I was so busy down there and rented a room. And I was probably the most successful homeless guy you could say for a while, for 3.5 years. It was a lot of fun.
A quote, right? Put that on a t-shirt with your face. The most successful homeless guy you've ever met.
Good times.
That's wild, though. I love that story, though, because so many people would say that they want to do that. They would talk about, one day I'm going to go see every ballpark, and you made it happen. I made other things happen around it. It wasn't just like a vacation. In a way, it's very smart. It's a 3.5 year business expense that you had to have some fun because you're taking those meetings in every city.
And that's the thing. Don't get me wrong. I would come home for the holidays, or I'd fly back if I need to with the dog and stuff like that. But that's the thing is, once you've gotten rid of everything, it's really very liberating. Don't get me wrong. I love living in Austin, Texas. I love the home that we live in here and the artwork and other things that I have along the way and our animals. Wouldn't trade those for anything. But I think when you get out and you're on your own, and you don't know where you're going, and you're coming up with a plan like, hey, where am I going to do? It's so liberating. And you really, to be successful, you have to find yourself. I think that's one of the big things. I think a lot of people get in the idea of keeping up with the Joneses, as far as keeping up with appearances. I got to dress a certain way. I got to drive a certain car. I got to live in a certain neighborhood. And that's the big thing I've never been big on. I mean, I've had just as much fun eating a pimento cheese sandwich on the side of the road or at Taco Bell versus having a Ruth Chris Steakhouse. Because you're just talking with people. And I think it's one of the most important things that you can do is, if you're investing in another different area, get on a plane. Southwest has those want to get away rates so you can fly across, meet people, talk to people. We are so, especially with COVID this last year, we're so used to being at home and being on Zoom or StreamYard or something like that.
Right.
We don't even know our neighbors next door. We don't even know the people across the street.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing for people. It was rewarding because now you never know who you're going to meet, and never know what kind of experience you have. And so it's a great thing and comes in really handy when I'm talking with people, or people are talking about my business, where they want to, they're thinking about taking my classes or investing with me. I can have that rapport with them. Like, oh, you live there? Is this restaurant still open? Or, I've been down to, is Lulu's backyard still open? Jimmy Buffett's sister's place still available in Gulf Shores there. That kind of stuff is just priceless when you can have those experiences. And I think that's one thing many people in finance, they're very stoic, very stiff. It's like,
Yeah.
The starch on their shirts keep them from doing anything. Me, I'm like, look, let's have a beer. Let's chill. Let's have fun. Tell me what excites you. Tell me a little bit about yourself. And that's where the real relationships these are made. It's all about building rapport if you can.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. And you mentioned like with the pandemic, we don't know our neighbors, which I agree. I mean, I don't know some of my neighbors, but what's cool with the internet though is like I was on a podcast with a guy on Sunday this week who lives in Cyprus, right? It's like you can go and make these connections globally. You just have to want to and take steps to doing it and meet the people where they are, which is what we're doing right now on the computer, which is so great. But it's just another example for folks, right? Like just to do it, right? Take that action. You don't have to sell all your stuff like you did. You can. There's ways to get into it and get comfortable meeting people, pushing your comfort zone, even while sitting on your couch, which is cool.
And that's a big thing these days. You just got to get out and market. I think a lot of people don't realize it's so much easier than it ever was before. Whether you do want to go to Cyprus or you want to talk to somebody from Cyprus, it's just a matter of putting yourself out there first and foremost.
Yeah.
And with the use of tools like LinkedIn and Facebook and, Instagram or TikTok or Clubhouse today. I was on a Clubhouse thing today, and there's like people from 15 different countries on it sharing their experiences on different things. And it's just, and podcasting itself, you get people across the world these days listening in, and you never know who's going to hear what you have to say and add value to their day in, day out life.
Yeah. So mention your dad briefly. And you said that your faith comes from your dad. I'd love to talk about that a little bit, right? Your parents, your grandparents. Why are you the way you are, Scott? What do you think when you look at your family stuff and you look at what you've accomplished? Do you reflect on it ever and realize that you took this piece from your dad and that piece from your mom, and here you are?
So my dad was my hero growing up. And I joke about faith, and I mean faith all in serious. Is actually he went to seminary school to be a minister, and he decided not to be a minister, but he actually took 2 years off from high school when his older brother went to the Korean War to stay home with his dad and his mom and on the farm. And my parents are from Minnesota. That's where I was born originally. And so that work ethic comes in of waking up early and putting in a good solid day's work and giving and helping out your neighbor as best you can. That comes really from my father. And when my parents moved to South Texas, my dad had different jobs, and then he opened up a hardware store in a small little community of Ingleside, which was about 4,000 people right across the bay from Corpus Christi. So I grew up working in that hardware store as a young kid and working with people and waiting on them and running the register, and really saw my dad's work ethic and helping people that were, we'd open 6 days a week, and sometimes on a seventh day on the Sabbath, to help somebody out with a busted pipe. They couldn't make the trip into town. They needed somebody to fix something. We'd go in and help them out there. And I just really saw my dad and saw how, it wasn't always sunshine and rainbows. You had some bad months and good months, but he always showed up. He was driven. He always found a way to make things. We never went without. My parents weren't really like, hey, you need to go do this. You need to get straight A's. Hey, we support you in what you do. And so my mom jokes that as loud as I am, as bubbly as I must be adopted, because my dad was very quiet and she's very quiet. I'm one of, my dad had 7 kids with his first wife, and I'm the oldest of the second litter, as I like to say, but I'm the only one out of 10 kids that went to college and got a college degree. My younger sister enjoys her job. My younger brother got his associates after I went, but I think the biggest thing is if your parents are there, and hopefully they're spending time with it. I know a lot of parents are freaking out this last year because now they've got to be at home with their kids and their other spouses. And I always saw my mom and dad working together, to rowing the boat in the same direction towards a common goal, supporting kids. They even adopted their two grandkids. So we had a household of 7 growing up, and, you end up helping each other out as best you can. You plug in and help everybody out. And I think that's just kind of come along the way and has helped me, help people. I'm always glad to give somebody 30 minutes to talk with them or help them out or answer questions. And I think you talk about unseen work. That's where it comes from. Is my dad, look, you need a little piece of wood. Here you go. Take it and walk away. I'm not going to charge you a nickel for it. Just come back when you need something bigger.
Yeah. Well, it makes a lot of sense. Just from what I know about you, the Minnesota totally makes sense. You're the Midwest coming out with like
Minnesota.
people and talking and just that neighborly, right? From what people I know out there, that makes total sense. Not that it's not Southern too, but that clicks. Growing up on the farm, the work ethic, a huge family. That's cool. It's funny that we both have that in common. Actually, my grandfather was a pastor.
Oh, wow.
So growing up for me, it was similar. That like the extended family of the church, and you show up and it's like you're the pastor's grandkid, and everybody's in your business. They want to talk to you, but then it's also cool to see just that example of somebody you literally look up to when you're little. You know, they're taller than you, and
Right.
watching how they interact with people. Like your story of the wood, I had similar stories of, you know, my grandfather getting involved in certain ways in the community. That just like that's just what you see as normal, even though it's not normal, right? And then it's cool to think back on like our versions of that now.
Yeah, I mean it's such a great thing. You know, you think about, and it's not. We see some things too. My dad passed away about 10 years ago, and I helped my mom clean out his shop. He sold the hardware store and his shop, and it was over like a 2-week period. I was down there helping out with some things, and just people came out of the woodwork. We heard stories of him helping out people, or we'd come across something and not know what the heck it was, and you know, somebody would come in and talk about, share these, and that's one of the great things I think people have a big heart is you hear all these stories of little things that they don't ask for attention on. It's the unseen work, the unseen help with people to help them out. I mean, look, we all go through ups and downs, financial hiccups, or good days and bad days. And sometimes it's just a smile or a joke or even a breakfast taco buying that for somebody when they're having a bad day or something. It goes a long way.
Or margarita, right?
Or a margarita, baby. We've bought quite a few on some of the different things we've done. Amen to that. Yes, sir.
So another thing you mentioned earlier was that you flopped. You said you flopped on something. So I'd love to dig into that for everybody watching. By now, if you've come back multiple times, you know what I mean by flop, which is the fail, lie, obsess, pretend. That I believe we can't escape failure, right? It's everywhere. We all fail. It's what we do after that matters. So the flop is where I literally just paint this picture in my mind every time, like me face down like a mud puddle, like flopped, like rock bottom, like I messed up. It's a true failure. So what was that flop you were referring to? Or if you have another flop story of a time.
Do we have long enough to talk about flops?
Yeah, we got about I'll give you 20 more minutes to talk flops. Let's do it.
So I think that the most important one that really did lead to a lot of things was I got married out of college, married my high school or college sweetheart. We've been married for about a year, bought our first house. You know, things were going good. I was making close to 6 figures as a financial advisor. She was working as a private school teacher. We loved those real estate shows. So we went out and bought 2 investment properties here in Austin, Texas, almost back to back, and 100% financing because we had such great credit and it was such an easy time to get mortgages at that time. Well, in a matter of a month, I got laid off from my job. They just closed the location. They laid everybody off. And the employer for our 2 tenants and our 2 rental properties they got laid off too. And, you know, so you get really, since we didn't have a lot of savings because as young kids, you buy a new truck and buy new stuff for the new house, stuff like that. So we went through our savings very quickly and we were trying to make 6 mortgage payments on a private school teacher salary.
Wow.
Yeah, that was not a good time. And, you know, financial stress is one of the biggest causes of divorce and stress out there. We know that. It was very stressful at that time. And so for roughly about a year, I did anything I could. I mean, I put down that, hey, I want to be a real estate investor goal till later on. I'm like, I got to put some money. I was waiting tables at Chili's. I was delivering for FedEx home delivery for $1, a successful thing. You know, I was almost going door to door on Ginzu knives for the most part. Didn't quite get there, but I thought about it. But that was a big flop for me. And I really was depressed and upset about what I had gone through and put us through. And so it was about a year and a half before I finally got out of that, kind of got back into what I wanted to do. But that year, you know, was not good. I kept the dream alive, but I didn't know how I was going to get to that, because when you get kicked in the teeth or the shin or the huevos, you don't know, you're kind of, you know, gun shy from putting it out there and going and doing something again. And I learned the most from that I needed to learn how to do it the right way. I needed to find a mentor, find somebody to help guide me along the way instead of thinking I could do it all by myself.
Yeah, so you managed to make it out though, right? You didn't have to. Did you have to declare bankruptcy, or you figured it out?
I was very close to that. we were able to get rid of the 2 investment properties. I was able to do a loan modification with the bank and keep our primary house. And so that's why I empathize. I think it helped me lead to a lot of empathy for what I'm doing today,
Right.
funny or not. And being the deadbeat borrower, the non-performing borrower back in the day, I have a lot of empathy because I can talk to people. Listen, I know you're in a bad situation. What's going on? Let's just have a talk. What's going on? Do you need some help? I'm willing to give you some help. I could be your best friend or I could be your worst enemy. You just got to work with me. And that was one of the things that was lucky enough is I did what I needed to do. I worked some long hours. I bust my butt. We took care of things. And then, it was really nice. 2 years later, I was actually able to retire my wife from her teaching job at the point and do what I wanted to do. We ended up getting divorced. So that's another story. I used to call that a flop, but I look at it as not as hindsight now is like, hey, probably one of the best things that ever happened to me because I wouldn't have found the lovely lady that I'm with now that is just the joy of my life.
Yeah, that's good. If she's over there watching, that's a good recovery there. If she's listening,
she's downstairs. She's probably not listening. So anyway.
Well, what I think is cool about that example, I agree with you. That's probably why you have so much empathy, right? It makes sense for those deadbeat people that you were. But also it's cool, like you were a waiter at Chili's. You delivered for FedEx. Another anomaly, like if you tell someone, I'm in finance or, you're literally like a bank. People don't think about those types of people as delivering for FedEx. So I think that's another way where you can probably relate to people and be like, I get it. I've worked these jobs. I know what it's like. So let's figure this out together, Yeah,
that's the thing is people, I think when we have a bad time, we get so bogged down in our own misery. I mean, going down that rabbit hole of despair. And you got to pull your head out of your ass at some point and realize, hey, there are opportunities out there. There are jobs. Sometimes you got to swallow your pride. Look, I would have dug ditches. I would have mowed yards, whatever I need to do to put food on the table to do what I need to do. And I think when you are facing that, it takes away a lot of fear because once you've gone through that, you're like, okay, I've been through that. I'm not afraid of fail. I know that I can find my way through it. I mean, everybody you hear about that has success has their rags to riches stories or their failure to success. But it does. I mean, the good Lord never gives us something that we can't handle. And sometimes you have to build a thick skin by going through some trials and tribulations to be ready for that bigger ball game, that bigger opportunity that's coming down the road. And you never know. I look back at the time and I can remember like the girl I had a big crush on in high school coming into the restaurant and actually waiting on her. She's like, oh, you've done well after high school. You're waiting on tables. Yes, I would like some fries with that, please. You know what I mean? And you're like, oh, you're just like want to run back home to mama with your tail between your legs. But you have to realize, look, there's a reason for everything. We're all in the position we are because of decisions we've made. I could have done better things before not get to this, but you never know until you've reached out, let go of that kind of that thing holding you in place and take a leap of faith sometimes, learn lick my wounds and you're much more experienced. Even the only thing that you guarantee by not trying is failure because you'll never accomplish your dreams or goals if you don't at least give it a chance to try.
Yeah, and that's way worse. Like playing the coulda, shoulda, woulda game is way worse than being like, remember that time where it was horrible, but I made it through, right? And you can look back at it fondly instead of looking back and play what if. And that is, I gotta imagine though, you probably wouldn't be doing what you're doing today if you hadn't gone through all that.
Somebody asked me that the other day in a podcast, and I was like, you know what? I don't know. I'd probably be in business of some sort, but I'd probably working in a corporate job instead of being my own boss. Yeah. And I've been basically making my own money since that time, since 2004. I haven't had a W-2 job since then. And I'd probably be a banker. I look at some of my friends I was in banking with, and they're still there, or they're at a different bank, and they enjoy what they're doing. They're not happy, and especially my high school and college buddies, I'll see them every once in a while. Same thing. They're not happy. They all think I'm crazy. In some cases, my family thinks crazy, which is totally fine. I don't mind it. But that's the thing. I think you sometimes got to be a little bit of a riverboat gambler to accomplish things, to launch a podcast or to write a book. You know what I mean? Or to apply for a TED Talk or whatever that might be, whatever your goal might be, you got to start doing it. You just got to start laying it out there. I mean, when I started calling banks, when I was working as a mortgage company, I called like 55 banks in a row, and I got told no until I got my first yes. And then I was on the rise. I got one yes. I ended up making $50,000 off that one yes. I was like, that's all I needed to know. I mean, how many times did you apply for a TED Talk before you got one, Miles?
It's a bad example. The first time I applied for it, I got it.
Well, that's good. You golden child there, but silver spoon in your mouth. No, but okay,
But I
listen.
love your example.
How many edits of your book did you go through before?
Oh, so many edits. Yeah. And versions of the talk. And I love that story of 55. I think like everybody should experience what it's like to work the phones and try to sell something. Like for $1, go make $1 off somebody for something. I experimented with that during the pandemic using apps like Shaper and Bumble Biz. I was like just consulting stuff. I was like, I'll help you start a podcast, or I'll be your accountability coach. I was just doing whatever people would pay me to do just to experiment with my time I wasn't spending in a commute. And it is a rush. Like it's exhausting. You have to love it. But when you work in it and you're on fire and you feel the conversation and you're like, you get the sale, it's a rush. And I get why people get addicted to doing that, especially when that rush aligns with a true passion and a true calling that you have. There's not much better than that.
If you realize that 80% of sales are made after the 5th contact, and most people, over 50% of people, never follow up with a contact or a lead after the first time. And so that's one thing. I have a marketing mindset a lot of times, and I'm always like, okay, I know I got to touch space with somebody 5, 6, 7, 8 times before they say yes. It doesn't mean I'm going to bug them and stalk them. I'm going to try to deliver something valuable to them each time. But that's a lot of people forget about that. And so there's one thing that we do every month that we live stream, and we'll actually sell tickets to it now, is people can watch me make phone calls for a day and watch me call banks. They can hear the conversations. They can hear me say, people tell me no or hang up on me, or they can hear the good. And that takes away a lot of the fears. They're like, oh, that doesn't seem very difficult. If Scott can do it, that idiot, I sure as hell can do it because I'm smarter than he is. And that's part of what I think is what draws people to us is like, look, if I can do it, you guys can do it. I'm not the smartest tool in the shed. I'm a bulldog. I'm going to outwork you. I'm going to outmarket it. I may not be doing a whole lot of things, but I've got my formula and I keep it simple. And it works once you've built the systems in place a lot of times.
I love that. That's so creative. Selling tickets to watch people watch you talk on the phone. I
had to thank an attorney. I saw an attorney send an email and he's like, oh, for $49, you can, it's a very valuable webinar for an hour. I was like, an hour? I'll do better. 4 hours for $49. And 20 people signed up for it. I started laughing. I was like, that's a pretty good hourly rate there for 4 days.
Yeah, that's not bad. And you close the deal on the phone, you're double dipping.
Oh yeah. People are like, oh my God, like it was successful. I'm getting phone numbers and emails and deals sent to me live, and people are like, oh my God, that's amazing. Cracking up. So, you just got to be creative. Sometimes I'll throw stuff outside the box and see if it'll stick, just to be goofy. Especially, with pop culture these days, a lot of our marketing is just kind of goofy stuff. We try to align what's going on in the movies or in the world. Like when Captain America or Civil War came out, Avengers Civil War came out. We did a whole thing, Note Nation Civil War, where we had one of my competitors and one me get together, and we had me being Iron Man and him being Captain America, and our faces melded. We had 800 people on a webinar to watch us hash it out. And it was just great. And it was just, or I throw something out there, like I went to Vegas and saw a show called, I remember what it was called, Spiegel World, something like that. And they had a lady, because I'm out to get more ass tonight. And ass was A period, S period, S period. And she's like, ass stands for assist, strategize, and support. I was like, oh, that's brilliant. So I sent an email up. I got back home, get more ass this weekend. People opened it up, or when 50 Shades of Grey came out, 50 Shades of Notes, do you feel like you need to be spanked? It was just, you be goofy, be yourself. Not everybody's going to be your friend or client, and that's okay. You got to have a little bit thicker skin when it comes to being successful in things, but realize you're not going to make everybody happy. I think it's one of the biggest things that I've learned from one of my mentors along the way.
And that's also part of being your own boss. You can send out emails talking about getting more ass tonight and not get fired.
Well, it's not about getting, it's assist, strategize, support.
I know.
Man. Get your mind out of the gutter. Come on, Miles.
Got another comment here. Jennifer Cooper checking in. Her and Dave have hit the road on their road trip. It's fun watching the Coopers cross the country. Checking in from Denver, Colorado. What's up, guys?
That's awesome. Denver's great. Catch up. The Rockies are playing today, and I think the Giants beat them 2-1. If you're a ball game fan there, so hey, Jennifer, call me if you need some good ideas for eating out when you're traveling too. I think we already exchanged numbers, but anyway.
Yeah, and Jen, tell Dave to keep it easy on the Crown Royal out there. When you're drinking at elevation, it'll catch up to you.
Yeah, don't drink Crown in the Crown for sure.
So what about a flip, Scott? If the F.L.O.P was, working at Chili's because of the investment property situation, what's an example of not a true failure, but more of a setback where you messed up, but you're able to turn it into something that worked for you?
I would say, man, I would say literally going through a divorce and end of the business, and then really whole market changing, having to pivot from being a mortgage broker to being a note investor. You have to, a lot of people, I saw a lot of my friends that were in the mortgage industry just try to keep banging their head, trying to keep originating loans. And it just didn't work for them. They had to change. And so that was one thing that I learned is I when I started buying debt, is I took what I learned as a mortgage originator to find borrowers. I also use it to find distressed deals that then I could call the banks. And that was one of the biggest things, taking what I learned as a mortgage broker, applying it with the marketing, the follow-up, the systems, the CRMs, the touching base with clients. And I just applied that to what I was doing as a banker, making 50 to 100 phone calls, sending out emails, scrubbing lists off the county records, just to take a look at what was going on and just not being afraid of the phone, picking the phone and dialing and making a phone call to somebody. So that would be one of the biggest things I'd say. I think a lot of people, especially with COVID, had to learn to pivot. Here's a $25,000 mistake that turned into one of the best things I've ever done. We've done a lot of education. We do a lot of Zoom trainings now, but we were doing a lot of teaching workshops, hotel workshops, and we had this idea to do this event called the Build Your Legacy Summit in Houston, Texas. And we dropped 15,000 postcards, and we had all sorts of marketing and 25 grand on audio, video, and room blocks, and it flopped. Nobody signed up. And so I had to cancel the event 3 days before the event because there was just nobody signing up.
Yeah.
And I was so upset and stressed out about this. I could literally remember almost having a heart attack. I remember when I canceled it, how my blood pressure actually went down. Very nice. And there we are. We're here in Austin, upset, driving from Austin to Dallas, and just kind of, but once again, and then Stephanie's like, well, Scott, why don't you just do all your stuff online? Why don't you quit doing these hotel events that have this huge overhead? And why don't you just do the virtual event? I'm like, oh, it'll never play out. People just want to be in person. That's what they want. They won't do it as real estate. She's like, why don't you give it a try? I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And so we tried one event, and it was just awesome. We did all via, Zoom or GoToWebinar, I don't remember what it was, but we did it. We had a huge turnout. It was successful, a lot less overhead. And then literally the next night, I basically let go half my staff. I was like, okay, we're doing everything virtually now. I don't need you here. I don't need you flying. We cut all this overhead. So that was taking a $25,000 mistake, at least, that we lost money on, and learning from it and immediately pivoting. So when COVID kicked in, this is old hat for us. We've been doing virtual events, virtual training for 5 years.
Right.
And we positioned ourselves in our niche of real estate as the guy out there who's doing online stuff, online summits that bring in 300 to 1,500 people, and people are trying to figure this out. And it was kind of interesting because our alma mater, Texas State University, the head of journalism, who I'm friends with, who has a podcast, she reached back out to me. She's like, Scott, would you mind spend an hour on the phone with me and some of our staff talking about how you're doing your virtual stuff, your virtual classes and stuff like that to help us out? Like, yeah, I'd be glad to. You're journalism. Aren't you familiar with this? She's like, yeah, but they need to hear it from somebody else besides me. I was like, okay. So that would be one of the biggest flips. And I got to give, like I said, Steph was the one that came up with it. She beat me in the head with a baseball bat because I was thick-headed about it. But it was one of the best decisions we made. If we'd had a successful event in Houston, I don't know if I'd ever gone doing the virtual stuff. We would have kept plodding down that road because that was what was working at the time.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best mistakes that we've ever made.
Yeah, it's a twofer there, right? You actually get people to attend the event and pay for it, and then you can reduce your overhead. So it's like you're making out on both ends. And then when COVID hit, you're not like have a huge payroll you have to cover, So yeah, it's fortuitous.
Well,
for sure.
What was great is it opened up to a lot of our speakers could now go to another event, speak there, and they could also get on my event up in their hotel room and speak for an hour. So it was like a double dip. I think we actually do better on my event than they would in an in-person event. So anytime I'd call them, I was like, hey, I got a virtual event. And they're like, oh yeah, sure. You know how to market. And your clients are you're responsive and you're dedicated. So yeah, I get a lot. It was the number one thing here. I chuckled 3 years ago. I had my biggest competitor actually come up to me at an event and ask me if I could start marketing his stuff.
Nice.
And I was like, I appreciate that. Thank you. It is an honor that you would think of me that way now. But no, I'm going to stick in my lane. You stick in your lane. We'll just keep it that way.
Yeah. You should have been like, sure, I'll do it for this crazy amount of money, right? And
yeah.
make it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. But it's an honor. I mean, that's the thing is you just we all have people that are haters. You know, like I said, my mentor told me a while back that we've got 3 buckets of people that are in. You have your friends and family and colleagues and people that love you in one bucket. Then you have your haters, your enemies, the people that just have a dark hole for a soul. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not going to like anything. And they're on the other side. Too often, though, if like we send an email blast up market, it goes out to everybody. We worry. We don't think about the 10 or 15 people in the good bucket that cheered us on or liked it. We think about that one person that made a negative comment on the YouTube channel and said, "Oh, what are you doing? You can't do that." You have to basically put that third bucket aside and just focus on the people that love you, and then that middle bucket of people that don't know you.
Sure.
And if you keep doing that, keep doing work, keep honing that, what will happen is, yes, you'll take that middle bucket and put them over. And then what will happen is the haters will get tired of hating on you because they're going to see that it doesn't affect you. They'll go away, or better yet, they'll come on over to your side and say, "Oh, I know you back when," and you can just think to yourself, "Yeah, I remember those
negative comments, right?
But come on aboard, I'll take your money, cha-ching, cha-ching, baby."
Yeah, it reminds me of. I actually just talked about this morning on an Instagram live. I heard this word that I thought was awesome. It's the opposite of paranoid. Do you know what that is?
Happy?
So yeah, all right. But the opposite of paranoia is called pronoia. Ooh. And so if your paranoia is thinking like the whole world's out to get you, pronoia is believing that everybody is secretly conspiring in your favor. Ooh. To support you. So it's like instead of passing people on the street being like, "What's up with that guy? Why is he like trying to knock me down?" It's like, "Hey, that guy's trying to help me," right? It's just like the complete flip, and that positive focus, like you're saying, versus the negative focus. It's huge for your own mental well-being and how you show up and compete.
You know, our news could learn a lot from that because it is the whole paranoia aspect of our news and media. I mean, you can't buy into that because they will say, if you keep watching the news, it'll be just negative, and you'll have that. It's basically a feed in your mind, and it really comes from programming your mind what you listen and watch to. And that's why I think podcasts and StreamYard and things like this are so valuable because you get a different take on things versus that whole Debbie Downer, this world is falling, the sky is falling kind of crap. So
yeah. So speaking of that, you do a lot of these. You do a lot of podcasts. You do a lot of live streams. Your own show's nationally syndicated. You talk a lot, right?
Yeah.
What's something that you haven't really talked about? What's a true piece of unseen Scott Carson work here that we could talk about to round out the show?
So I think we talk about podcasts, and one of the things that we do a lot of, and I've got to give a big shout out to my VA who helps me out with it, is I've always, instead not wanting to travel as much as I used to, I still had to find a way to be in front of audiences instead of like reaching out to people, say having to fly out and spend 3 days speaking to the same 100 people in my industry that go from event to event and event. I realized it was much more valuable for me to speak on somebody else's podcast because it was a new audience, or be asked to speak, add value to somebody's audience if I could, where I could do 5 in a day, 6 or 7 a day and do it for, 2-3 days. I could be in 21 audiences versus 1. And so I started really leveraging podcasts. So we do a lot of searching for, real estate investing or real estate or business or entrepreneurship podcasts out there. And then we do a deep dive. Hey, how many episodes do they have? When do they release their most recent episode? Are they still doing it? And, what were their last 3 or 4 episodes that we take a look at to see how we could add value? Look who they've had on. When we have a guest on, we search to see what podcasts that they've also been on and listen in so that I can ask some different questions. Like I had Dean Graziosi, he's kind of a famous name in real estate, doing a lot of stuff with Tony Robbins and infomercials in the middle of the night for real estate. We had him on my podcast just recently, and I went and listened to 4 or 5 different podcasts he'd been on to pull in different questions, and I am stumped on a couple things. And so people don't think about that. I'm listening constantly to podcasts. I'm on Clubhouse. I'm listening. I'm watching. I'm researching. People don't see that. And so I get a lot of compliments for being a good interviewer on my podcast, but it's because I'm listening. I don't want to ask them the same question they've been asked 4 times in a row. I also don't want to deliver the same content that if they had somebody else on, I wanted to be fresh and something valuable. So do a lot of research in that. I mean, it doesn't take a lot. I mean, we buy a list for like $90 from one podcast list. We can download a lot of stuff. Then it's a matter of just listening and checking out. And I'm a big believer that you have to have a marketing first mindset. So really the first hour of every day is marketing. And when I get up, I feed the cat so they quit meowing at me. I got the coffee rolling. I go outside, sit on my patio, and I've got the wind chimes going, the wind, the birds whistling. I'm on my phone looking at different things, just kind of after I'm listening to meditation, get me rocking and rolling for the day. I spend at least 30 minutes just kind of researching what's going on, what's just doing it. It's really an enjoyable thing. That kind of helps me lead into, okay, when I sit down in front of my office, what's the next hour? How are we marketing? What email is going out? What podcast am I recording? Or whose podcast am I on the next hour? And making sure I'm fresh and ready and something new if we can. So
I love that. That's a great. I think a lot of people could learn from that, right? So often we kind of just show up and send it in, right? And it, like you said, it's the same stereotypical, like, what's the best piece of advice you could give in podcasts and things like that. That's smart to do it that way. And then that just helps feed how people talk about you, and then it just serves up even more opportunities, I'm sure.
The best thing is we're all experts at something. We're all got something, whether it's basket weaving, cat rescue, plants, gardening, notes, real estate, whatever it might be, dogs, whatever it might. If you can share that in something you're passionate about, that can really add value to other people's lives. You never know when somebody's going through a bad day. They need somebody just to vent to. I mean,
right.
And then that's something too. If you're really trying to be an entrepreneur, try to do something, try to find something that you would do basically for free. And or something that you really enjoy spending your time. And I wouldn't get, like I used to enjoy mowing my lawn. Now I don't really enjoy it that much anymore. But there's people out there that are looking for your advice. And I would highly recommend if you're looking for a book to read Seth Godin's Tribes book out there, because it talks about how we all have different tribes that surround us, and our tribes are looking for leaders. And everybody's a leader at something. It's usually something that you're passionate about or have experience in. So don't be afraid to share your expertise.
Yeah, it's great advice. Because so many people don't realize they have expertise. Just add on to that, right? But somebody out there doesn't know how to do something that you know how to do. And so it's just leaning into that and owning what you're an expert in and then going for it. That's great. Well, Scott, it's been about an hour. I'm gonna cut this off, man. I appreciate your time. I'll let you go back and finish that margarita, make another one.
There we go. I might have to make a little guacamole to go along with this tonight.
There you go.
For you. But it's been an honor. Guys, if you're watching, and gals out there, if you're watching, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that like button, out there. Make sure you share this with at least one person out there. Miles is doing such an amazing job here with Unseen Work. Check out his book, man. Come on, man. Go check out the TEDx video on YouTube. Order his book. You got to do that. Come on. He's getting it. He's not paying me to say this. I just mean this from the bottom of my heart. So
thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Honored to be here.
I've got your stuff up on the Taker. Everybody, you can connect with Scott on LinkedIn. Check out his website for where all his awesome stuff is, and support him as well. And then tune in next week. We're here at it again. It's the 12th of May already. It's crazy. But May 12th, 8:45 p.m., we'll be talking to Mr. Tom Reddy. Put that banner up here. Tom Reddy of Synergy Steel. Another Dave Cooper Live follow-on. Pulling from Dave's tribe for these, which is fun. So we're excited to talk to Tom. Hope you guys will join us. And Scott, thanks again. We'll see everybody later.
Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it.